My sister demanded I abort my baby. So she could be first, the rest of the family turned on me. What happened next left them in silence. I'm Natalie, 30 years old, female. When the pregnancy test finally showed 2 lines, my hands was shaking so bad I nearly dropped it in the sink. Months of trying, months of quiet heartbreak with every negative test, and then suddenly, life. I sat on the bathroom floor, pressed my palm against my stomach like I could somehow feel that spark already growing inside me, and I cried. Not just tears, full-on ugly sobbing, gasping for air, whispering thank you into the silence. Telling James was its own kind of joy. He picked me up and spun me around like we were in some cheesy rom-com, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. For once, the universe had given us exactly what we'd been begging for. When we finally told the family, the reaction was everything I'd hoped for. Almost. My parents teared up instantly. My brother cracked some dumb joke about Uncle Duty. Even my grandmother, who rarely shows emotion, squeezed my hand so tight I thought she'd never let go. It felt like this huge wave of love crashing over me. Everyone, except Serena, my sister. Serena is 33, older than me by 3 years. And she's always carried that fact like a crown. She had to be first at everything. First to drive, first to move out, first to get married. She thrives in being ahead, even when no one else is running the race. Growing up, I used to idolize her. She was magnetic, confident, beautiful in a way that drew people in without her even trying. I followed her around like a shadow until I was old enough to realize that her approval was never really approval. It was control. The day I told her I was pregnant, her face froze. She didn't smile, didn't even blink at first. Just this rigid, glassy stare, like I had stolen something from her. And when she finally opened her mouth, it wasn't congratulations. It was, so you're trying to beat me to motherhood? Everyone else kind of laughed awkwardly like it was a bad joke. But I saw her eyes. Sharp, burning, angry. And when she hugged me goodbye that night, her arms were stiff, her jaw taut, and she whispered so low I barely caught it. You should have waited. Those words sank in my stomach like a stone. I wanted to believe it was just jealousy. Just a moment of weakness. But Serena isn't the kind of person who lets things go. Not when it means someone else crossed into territory she thought belonged to her. And deep down, I knew. This wasn't going to stop here. This was only the beginning. Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. And tell me what you think in the comments. I'll feature the best one in the next video. At first I kept telling myself I was overreacting. Families are messy, siblings get jealous, right? I tried to shrug it off, bury myself in the excitement of baby name lists, Pinterest nursery boards, and doctor's appointments with James. But Serena wouldn't let it go. The next time we all had dinner together, she showed up late and I immediately made it about her. She plopped down at the table with this dramatic sigh like she'd just run a marathon and loudly announced she and her husband had big news, that they were trying for a baby too. My mom and dad clapped their hands together like she'd just announced a Nobel Prize, while I sat there, my stomach flipping, because the way she looked at me wasn't joy. It was challenge, like she had to reclaim the spotlight. Then it got worse. Every conversation turned into a dig. If I said I was tired, she'd smirk. Better get used to it. Motherhood isn't for the weak. If James mentioned painting the nursery, Serena would cut in with, "Don't do it yet. You never know what could happen." She said it casually like a joke, but the way her voice lingered made my skin crawl. She started showing up uninvited too. Once, James and I were sitting on the couch, baby registry spread across the coffee table, when there was this aggressive knock on the door. Serena walked in without waiting for me to answer, carrying a box of prenatal vitamins. She shoved them into my hands and said, "You're probably not taking the right ones. I'll make sure my baby gets the good stuff." I laughed it off in the moment, but when she left, James looked at me with this frown. "She's not happy for us, is she?" he asked quietly. I just shook my head. Then came the night that really shook me. We were at my parents' house, just a casual weekend dinner, when Serena suddenly snapped. Out of nowhere, she slammed her wine glass on the table and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You stole this from me, Natalie. You knew I wanted to be the first mom. You couldn't let me have it, could you?" The room went silent. My mom gasped. My dad tried to calm her down, but Serena's face was red, her eyes wild. She stood up, pointing at my belly like it was some kind of weapon aimed at her. "If you cared about me at all, you'd wait. You'd stop this before it ruins everything." Before I could even process the words, James was on his feet, stepping between us. His voice was low, steady, but firm. "Don't you dare talk to Natalie like that." Serena's chest heaved as if she'd just run a sprint. Then she grabbed her purse, stormed out the door, and left everyone sitting in stunned silence. I remember staring down at my plate, appetite gone, hands trembling. For the first time I felt something I hadn't let myself feel before, fear, because this wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore. Serena's obsession was twisting into something darker, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done. After that night at my parents' house, things changed. James and I started pulling back, limiting how much time we spent around family. I wanted to protect my peace, focus on the pregnancy, but Serena wouldn't let the distance sit. She started showing up everywhere. If I posted a baby bump picture online, she'd be in the comments with backhanded remarks like, "Enjoy it while you can. Half of pregnancies don't even make it to term." If I mentioned a doctor's appointment, she'd suddenly appear at the same clinic, claiming she just happened to schedule one too. It was like she was stalking my milestones, desperate to keep pace or sabotage them. The scariest part was how she talked when we were alone. One afternoon she dropped by unannounced again. James was at work, and she walked straight into the nursery we'd been setting up. She ran her hands across the crib rail, her nails tapping against the wood, and said almost dreamily, "You know, if you really love me, you'd step aside, terminate, let me go first. That's how it should be." I remember standing there frozen, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. My own sister was suggesting I end my pregnancy, as a favor to her. When I told James later that night, he looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. He said we needed boundaries, locks, cameras, distance. But how do you put distance between yourself and family when they're this determined to claw their way back in? Things spiraled fast. Serena began calling my phone at all hours. If I didn't answer, she'd leave voicemails, her voice swinging from pleading to screaming. "You don't deserve this baby! I was meant to be first! You're selfish, Natalie!" Other times she'd cry, saying she was losing her mind, and I was the only one who could fix it. Then came the breaking point. My mom called me in a panic one night. Serena had tried to hire some unlicensed woman, a so-called midwife, to perform a C-section in her living room. She wasn't even full term. She was so obsessed with delivering first that she was literally willing to cut herself open just to beat me. It didn't go well. Within hours, Serena was bleeding out, rushed by ambulance to the ICU. Her baby, a tiny, fragile boy, was pulled out in chaos and sent straight to the NICU. Critical condition. No one knew if he'd survive the night. I sat on my couch, hands pressed against my belly, sobbing, not just for the horror of what she'd done to herself and her baby, but for the realization that my sister was gone. The Serena I once knew had been swallowed by this obsession, and now there was no turning back. James held me tight, whispering that we needed to stay focused on our baby, our safety. But even then, through the grief and fear, one thought burned in the back of my mind. If she was willing to do that to herself, what would she be willing to do to me? The night Serena was rushed into the ICU, the whole family was thrown into chaos. My parents sped to the hospital frantic, calling me every half hour with updates. The baby, Serena's son, was fighting for his life in the NICU, hooked up to more machines than anyone should ever see, attached to a newborn. And suddenly, somehow I was cast as the villain. My mom's voice over the phone was sharp, accusing, "You knew how fragile Serena was, Natalie. You could have been more sensitive. Maybe if you'd waited to announce, none of this would have happened." Waited? For what? For my sister to destroy herself chasing some twisted competition? For my own child's existence to be put on hold because Serena couldn't handle not being first? The words cut deep anyway, because buried under my anger was guilt, like maybe I really had lit the fuse just by daring to be happy. James was furious when he heard what Mom had said. He paced the kitchen like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. "She almost killed herself, Natalie. And now they're blaming you? That's insane. This is on Serena and no one else." But it wasn't just my mom. My aunt texted me, saying I should have been more discreet. My cousin, who barely speaks to me, sent a passive-aggressive message. Family comes first. Sometimes sacrifice is love. It was like they were all rewriting reality, trying to make Serena the victim and me the trigger. Only my dad had quietly pulled me aside later. He sighed, looked 10 years older, and said, "Serena's not well, but don't let her take this joy from you. Protect yourself." His words were softer, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore. As Serena lay sedated in the ICU, her anger didn't die down, it metastasized. Even hooked up to machines, she found ways to lash out. Nurses told me she kept muttering my name, ranting about how I had stolen her life. When she was lucid enough to use her phone, she bombarded me with messages. One read, "I'll never forgive you. You don't deserve that baby. I'll make sure she knows it." Yes, she. We just learned through a scan that James and I were having a little girl. It should have been a magical, intimate moment. Instead, Serena twisted it, spitting poison before my daughter was even born. I started sleeping with my phone on silent just to block out the flood of notifications. James installed cameras outside our house and started walking me to the car every morning before work. I hated that we needed this. I hated that my pregnancy glow had been replaced with a constant edge of dread. And yet, the family split wider every day. Some rallied behind Serena, treating her as a tragic figure who'd simply lost her way. Others quietly admitted she'd gone too far, but avoided saying it aloud, afraid of igniting more conflict. Holidays, phone calls, even group photos turned into battlegrounds over who stood with whom. Meanwhile, my due date crept closer, like a ticking clock in the middle of a minefield. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, if Serena had already tried to rip her own baby out just to win, what would she do when mine actually arrived? The closer I got to my due date, the more I felt Serena's presence like a shadow I couldn't shake. She'd survived the ICU scare, stabilized, and been discharged, but instead of getting help or reflecting on what she'd done, she doubled down. She showed up at my parents' house with bandages still on her stomach, proudly telling everyone she had sacrificed everything to bring her baby into the world. No mention of the illegal procedure, no acknowledgement of how reckless it was. Instead, she cast herself as a martyr, a mother who had fought harder than anyone else. Her son was still in the NICU struggling, and yet she found energy to target me. James and I went to a routine checkup, and when I came out of the exam room, the receptionist looked uncomfortable. She leaned forward and whispered, "Your sister was here earlier asking for your medical records. We told her no, obviously, but she was very insistent." I felt my blood run cold. Serena was trying to manipulate doctors now, trying to get close to me through hospital staff. James lost it when I told him. He started making calls to the hospital, the OB's office, anywhere Serena might try to wedge herself in. He demanded they flag her name, block her from access. He even asked about security measures for when I went into labor, and thank God he did. Because 2 weeks later I got a call from a nurse at the hospital. Serena had shown up claiming to be my birthing partner. She actually tried to sign in under my name, insisting she had the right to be present for the delivery. Security had to physically escort her out of the building while she screamed my name down the hallway. That was the night I realized. This wasn't just obsession, this was dangerous. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands cradling my stomach, and made a vow. Serena might have poisoned my pregnancy with her madness, but she would not touch my daughter. Not in the hospital, not ever. That night I started planning. I wasn't going to let Serena think she still had power over me. She'd humiliated me in front of family, stalked me at clinics, and tried to invade the one sacred moment James and I had been waiting for. So I decided I'd give her what she hated most, being invisible. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming. It was calculated. I called the hospital, my OB, even the nurses' station, and gave them a new list of approved visitors. James and my mom. That was it. No one else. And then, for the first time in months, I called my mom directly and said clearly, firmly, "Serena is not allowed near me or my baby. If she shows up, I'll have her removed." There's a pause, a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. Then Mom said softly, "Natalie, are you sure?" I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. If Serena wanted to make my pregnancy into a competition, then my revenge would be this. She'd lose access to the finish line entirely. Labor hit me like a storm in the middle of the night. James threw the hospital bag in the car, held my hand through every contraction, whispering steady words while I tried to breathe through the panic. This was supposed to be our moment, the one we'd fought for. And for a while, it was, until Serena tried one last stunt. Halfway through my labor, a nurse came into the delivery room looking shaken. She whispered to James, and I saw his entire body tense. When I demanded to know what was going on, he finally admitted Serena was downstairs. She'd been telling the front desk staff she was my sister, true enough, but then claimed she had special permission to witness the birth. They'd already called security. She was apparently in the lobby, shouting at the staff, insisting she wouldn't leave until they let her in. Even in the middle of contractions, I felt my blood run cold. I gripped James's hand so tight his knuckles whitened. "Keep her away," I said. My voice was low, hoarse, but I meant every syllable. And bless him, James made sure. He marched out of that room and raised hell until security locked down my floor. They stationed guards outside my door. Serena wasn't getting anywhere near me or my daughter. Hours later, through sweat and tears and pain I didn't know I could endure, I brought my baby girl into the world. Healthy, perfect. A tiny cry that shattered a months of fear and replaced it with awe. James held her first, tears streaking down his face, and then placed her in my arms. I should have been basking in that moment. But the storm hadn't ended, because while I cradled my newborn, my phone buzzed, and against my better judgment I glanced at the screen. Serena had sent a barrage of messages. Some were rambling, some vicious. That should have been me. You'll regret this. She's mine too. You can't keep her from me. I turned the phone face down on the table. James saw the look on my face and didn't even need to ask. He picked up my phone, scrolled, and then quietly said, "We're done with this. She's not coming near us again." The next morning, while I was still recovering, Serena tried another angle, calling the nurse's station, pretending to be me, asking for updates on my baby's condition. Thankfully, the hospital already had her flagged. They shut her down immediately, but that was the final straw. James and I contacted a lawyer from my hospital bed. By the time we went home with our daughter, the paperwork for a restraining order against Serena was already in motion. My revenge wasn't just cutting her out of the delivery room. It was erasing her access to me and my child completely. For once, I had the power, and this time Serena would learn exactly what it felt like to be locked out. Bringing our daughter home should have been the happiest chapter of my life. James carried the car seat through the front door, and for the first time in months I let myself breathe. Our little girl, tiny, warm, perfect, was safe in our arms. But even with the restraining order paperwork in progress, Serena's presence hovered like a storm cloud. The first week home, my mom called constantly, torn between joy for me and worry for Serena. Her tone was guilt-laced, as if I was supposed to fix the rift. "She's not herself, Natalie. She's hurting. Maybe if you let her see the baby, it would heal things." I nearly dropped the phone. "Heal things?" My voice cracked. "Mom, she tried to cut her own baby out just to beat me. She tried to break into the hospital while I was giving birth. And you want me to hand her my daughter?" James overheard and took the phone. He didn't shout. His voice was calm, clipped, final. "This isn't up for discussion. Serena is dangerous. If you can't see that, then maybe we need some distance from you, too." That shut my mom up, but it didn't stop the guilt trips from extended family. A cousin posted some cryptic nonsense on Facebook about family ties being stronger than pride. My aunt messaged me a Bible verse about forgiveness. Meanwhile, Serena herself kept finding ways around the cracks. New numbers, fake social media profiles, messages that would pop up no matter how many blocks I set. One night, around 2 a.m., the baby had just gone down when James noticed movement on the front porch camera. He pulled it up on his phone, and there was Serena. Standing in the dark, staring straight into the lens, her hair wild, her face pale. She didn't knock. She didn't move. She just stood there until James hit the porch light. Then she bolted. I shook for hours after, holding my daughter against my chest, rocking back and forth, whispering promises that I would never let anyone hurt her. The restraining order finally came through the next week, and we served it immediately. Still, a part of me knew paper wasn't going to stop Serena. She'd already crossed every line a sister could cross. But here's the thing. My revenge wasn't just the restraining order. It was living openly, loudly, joyfully with my baby girl. Posting pictures of her milestones, laughing with James, letting the world see that Serena hadn't broken me. She wanted to own my pregnancy, my motherhood. But instead, she was stuck watching from the outside, clawing at the glass. I didn't hide anymore. And every smile, every giggle, every peaceful night with my daughter felt like a victory Serena could never touch. But the truth? As much as I tried to move on, I knew this wasn't over. People like Serena don't just stop. They escalate. And I was right. because a few weeks later she made one last attempt to force her way back into my life. I thought the restraining order and the porch incident were the end of it, that Serena had finally hit a wall she couldn't climb over. But I underestimated how far she'd go when she felt locked out. It was a Sunday afternoon. James had gone out for groceries, and I was in the living room rocking my daughter when the sound of glass shattering jolted me upright. My heart seized. I ran to the kitchen, and there was Serena climbing through the broken window, blood streaking her arm where the glass had cut her. She looked feral, eyes wide, hair sticking to her face with sweat. She spotted the baby in my arms and lunged forward with this desperate guttural cry. "Give her to me! She's mine too, Natalie! She was supposed to be mine first!" I screamed, backing away, clutching my daughter against my chest so tight she started wailing. Adrenaline surged through me like fire. This wasn't jealousy anymore, it was madness. Before she could reach us, James burst through the front door, grocery bags crashing to the floor as he tackled Serena to the ground. She fought like a wild animal, clawing and kicking, screaming my name, screaming the baby's name. She shouldn't even have known it. My daughter's cries pierced through everything. James pinned her long enough to grab his phone and call 911. Within minutes, flashing lights lit up our street. Officers dragged Serena out, cuffed and thrashing as the neighbors watched from their lawns in stunned silence. I stood there shaking, barefoot on the kitchen tiles, clutching my baby like a shield, watching my sister get shoved into the back of a police car, her face twisted in rage, spitting accusations about how I had stolen her life. That night I sat in the nursery, rocking my daughter to sleep, staring at the soft pink walls we'd painted months ago. The broken window was boarded up, the blood scrubbed from the floor, but the scar it left in me ran deep. The restraining order escalated to criminal charges, breaking and entering, violation of court orders, attempted abduction. She was admitted for psychiatric evaluation after her arrest, and for the first time, the rest of the family couldn't deny what James and I had been saying all along. Serena wasn't just unstable. She was dangerous. Some relatives still whispered that I should forgive her, that sisters are forever. But that bond? It died the day she looked me in the eye and told me to kill my baby for her sake. Now, as I watch my daughter grow, chubby cheeks, tiny fists, that little laugh that feels like sunshine, I know one thing with absolute certainty. Serena will never touch her. Never. She tried to make motherhood into a competition, a battlefield where love was measured in who came first. But in the end, my greatest revenge wasn't the restraining order or the arrest or the silence that followed. It's this. My daughter is safe, happy, thriving, and Serena has to live with the fact that she lost everything in her obsession to win. And I will never let her back in. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.